I never imagined that the day I would watch my only son get married, a day I had pictured so many times in quiet moments, would end the way it did. For years, when life got heavy, I used to think about the future, about sitting in the front row at Ryan's wedding, proud and teary-eyed, watching him start his own family. In my mind, it was always warm, full of smiles and gratitude, maybe even a moment where he would take my hand and thank me for all I had done for him. But the real day, the one that actually came, unraveled like a cruel joke. The reception hall smelled faintly of roses and champagne. White tablecloth stretched across long rows of tables under glowing chandeliers. It was elegant, everything Emma Johnson had wanted, everything Ryan had agreed to, everything I had paid for. I had arrived early, checking place cards and centerpieces, making sure the florist had delivered the pale blush peonies. Emma insisted on the ones that cost twice as much as the standard arrangements. I had even reminded the staff to chill the champagne to Emma's preferred temperature. Then, as the music swelled and the guests began clinking glasses, Emma's voice sliced through the air like a blade. "You are not welcome here," she hissed, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing at the space between us, as if she were casting me out of some royal court. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried, and in an instant the laughter stopped. The music stopped. Even the waiters froze mid-step. Dozens of faces turned toward me, friends, extended family, strangers, all of them pretending to be confused but already leaning into the spectacle. I stood there, frozen, my hand tightening around the straps of my purse. Inside it was the check for $50,000, folded neatly, the ink still sharp and dark. $50,000 money I had written without hesitation to pay for everything that surrounded us. The hall, the flowers, the catering, the band, the dress, Emma had said, would make her feel like a princess. My son, my Ryan, the little boy who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares, just stared at the floor. Not a word, not even a glance in my direction. I could feel the burn rising in my throat. Don't cry. Not here. Don't give her the satisfaction. I forced myself to lift my chin, to breathe. And then, because standing still felt unbearable, I walked. Past rows of guests suddenly fascinated by their drinks, past a woman clutching her clutch like it was a life raft, past a man adjusting his tie as if that would erase the tension. I walked out, each step echoing in the hall's marble corridor, each step breaking something inside me. In the parking lot, the air was cooler, heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and car exhaust. My car sat under a dim street lamp, a lonely island of metal and shadow. I opened the door and slid into the driver's seat, my heart thudding so hard it made my arms tremble. Emma's voice looped in my head, sharp and poisonous. "You are not welcome here." Over and over, like a cruel chant. But it wasn't Emma who hurt the most. It was Ryan, my son, my only son. The boy I had raised alone, the boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose college tuition I had scraped and saved to cover, whose dreams I had nurtured like they were my own. And now he stood there like a stranger, his eyes glued to the floor, too cowardly even to defend his mother. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, lighting up the dark interior of the car. One message after another. "Why did you leave? Are you okay? Don't make a scene, Nancy." Not one message asked what they had done to me. Not one person stood up and said, "This isn't right." I swallowed hard. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them back. I would not cry for them. Not tonight. Instead, I sat still and let something else rise. Anger, slow, deliberate, cold. It built inside me like steel, hardening with every breath. For years, they had mistaken my quiet for weakness. They had assumed they could humiliate me and still float on the fairy tale I had built for them. Enough. My hands shook as I pulled up the wedding planner's email on my phone. My thumb hovered over her contact for a moment. The hotel window above me reflected my face, pale and drawn, but my eyes looked different, steady. I took a long breath, then pressed call. It rang twice before a cheerful, professional voice answered. "Hi, Nancy. I'm just reviewing the final details for tomorrow." "Cancel everything," I said, my voice flat, almost detached. There was a beat of silence on the other end. I'm so sorry. Did you say something?" I said cancel everything. The hall, the vendors, all payments. I'm done. Nancy, the contracts are in your name, but are you sure? This is so last minute." "I'm sure," I said. My voice didn't even tremble. If I'm not welcome at this wedding, then my money isn't welcome either. When I finally pulled into my garage, my hands had stopped shaking. The anger had melted into something sharper. Determination. They wanted me gone? Fine. But they would learn, painfully, that the whole fantasy had been built on my back. Inside my quiet kitchen, I set my purse on the table and pulled out the wedding binder I had made for Ryan and Emma. Each tab was labeled, each section color-coded: hall, catering, florist, photographer, band. Each page was a receipt, an invoice, a contract, my signature, my credit card. Their contributions? Pinterest boards, entitled requests, and promises to pay back someday. I picked up the phone again. "Hi, this is Nancy Miller. I'm the contract holder for the Miller wedding tomorrow. Yes, everything is set for. I'm canceling with immediate effect." A long pause. "Ma'am, are you sure? There is a substantial cancellation fee." "That won't be necessary. I paid the deposit, and under the contract I have the right." Silence. Then a cautious reply. "Understood. We will proceed to terminate the booking." I hung up. Next, the florist, then the caterer, then the photographer. With each call, my spine seemed to straighten a little more. It was all becoming clear. Ryan and Emma hadn't just wanted my help. They had expected it, demanded it. This wasn't their wedding. It was mine, paid for by me, arranged by me. And if I wasn't welcome, neither was my money. When I finished the last call with the band, I allowed myself a cold smile. Tomorrow they would wake up thinking they were walking into a fairy tale, but there would be no flowers, no food, no music, only the wreckage of their own arrogance. I sat in my quiet house, listening to the faint click of my mouse as I scrolled through emails. The hall contract, the catering contract, the band agreement. Each PDF bore my name, my signature, my billing address. They loved my money more than they loved me, I thought bitterly. Just a few weeks earlier, Emma had said, "We'll pay you back half, I promise, once Ryan gets his promotion." The words now sounded absurd, like a child promising to repay a mountain with a handful of pebbles. I opened the florist contract and read the fine print. Cancellation by client results in loss of deposit. But I was the client, not Emma, not Ryan. A rush of vindication swept through me. Without me, they couldn't call the vendors and magically piece things back together. They were helpless. The slam of a car door outside pulled me from my thoughts. I peeked through the blinds. Ryan's car. My chest tightened as hurried footsteps approached the door. A hard knock echoed through the house. "Mom, open the door. We need to talk." I didn't move. Another, louder knock. "Mom, I know you're in there." I sat perfectly still, hands clenched in my lap. Let him worry. Let him wonder if I'd answer. He no longer had the right to demand my time. A minute later, his voice came, angrier now, muffled by the door. "You can't do this. This is our wedding." My lips curled in the smallest smile. "No, Ryan, it never was yours." The knocking stopped eventually, but I didn't leave my chair. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it could break a rib, but I forced myself to stay still, staring at the blinking cursor on my screen. For 30 years I had been the patcher, the peacemaker, the one who wrote the checks and bit her tongue for the sake of harmony. Not anymore. Outside it was quiet. Ryan's car was gone. Then my phone buzzed on the table. Messages lit up. "Mom, why aren't you picking up?" "Mom, what the hell is going on?" "You're ruining our lives." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that didn't even sound like my own voice. My phone kept buzzing until, against my better judgment, I picked up. "Mom, what are you doing?" Ryan's voice was cracked with anger. "You can't cancel the wedding. Everyone's waiting." "Enough," I said, my voice low, cold, calm, calmer than I felt. "Yesterday you stood there and let her humiliate me in front of everyone. I didn't want to make a scene." Oh, but it was okay for Emma to make a scene. There was a long pause. "Mom, listen." Emma was upset. She didn't mean it. "You're overreacting." "Overreacting?" I snorted softly. "I paid for everything, Ryan. The hall, the food, the music, all of it. And you let her treat me like an uninvited guest." "This is our wedding," he shouted. "No," I said evenly. "It was my gift, and now it's gone." "Mom, please don't do this. We'll lose everything." Emma's crying her eyes out. Maybe she should think twice before she kicks her mother-in-law out of her own party. A notification popped up. A message from Emma. "Bitter, selfish old woman. She always hated me. I can't believe she would ruin Ryan's life out of spite. Stay away from us. You're toxic." I pressed my lips together as I read. "Did you see the messages she's been sending me?" I asked Ryan. "She's just upset," he mumbled. "You mean she's showing her true colors?" "Mom." "Goodbye, Ryan." I hung up before he could say another word. I sat there breathing hard. My phone buzzed again with Emma's name, but I turned it face down on the table. Tomorrow their fairy tale castle would fall, and for the first time I would not be the one to run in and save them. The knocking began before 9 a.m. "Mom, open the door. We need to talk." I didn't move. I had barely slept. My coffee sat cold on the kitchen counter. The knocking came again, louder. "Mom, don't make me stand out here all day." I sighed and opened the door a crack. Ryan's face was flushed, his hair a mess, as if he hadn't slept either. He marched in without waiting to be invited. "What the hell, Mom?" he barked, voice breaking as soon as he crossed into the living room. "You ruined everything. Did you think about me?" "About Emma?" "Lower your voice," I said coolly. "You are in my house." He ran his hand through his hair, pacing like an animal in a cage. "The vendors are gone. The hall said they booked another couple. The florist won't return our calls. Do you even understand what you've done?" "Yes," I said calmly. I stopped funding my own humiliation. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Humiliation?" Emma was just upset. She didn't mean what she said. "Oh, she meant it," I cut in. "She stood in front of everyone and sent me away. And you let it happen." His jaw clenched. I was trying not to make it worse. "You stood there like a stranger, Ryan. You didn't defend me. You didn't even look at me." His voice dropped, cold. You've always been that way, controlling, selfish. That's why Dad left." The words slapped me. My breath caught, but instead of crumbling, something in me hardened. "Selfish?" My voice shook with anger. "Do you know how much I gave up for you? The countless checks I wrote, the hours I worked, the dreams I put aside so you could have yours?" He trembled a little, but his face remained stubbornly blank. "You chose her over me," I said quietly. "Fine. Let her pay for the wedding she wants." He opened his mouth as if to argue, then closed it. I walked to the door and opened it wide. "You should go." He hesitated for a second, then stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I sank to the couch, my hands trembling. For the first time in years, I realized Ryan was no longer the boy I had raised. He had become a stranger. By noon, the phone started ringing. The first call was from a family friend, Linda. "Nancy," she began cautiously, "I just talked to Ryan. He's devastated. You have to fix this." I stared at the screen, my mouth a thin line. "How do you fix this, exactly?" "Reactivate the payments," she said gently, her voice soft but insistent, the way someone might speak to a child holding a fragile object. Linda's tone had that mix of concern and condescension that always made me tense. They're young, they made a mistake, but this is their wedding. You don't want to ruin it for them. I could feel my grip tighten around the edge of the counter, my knuckles whitening as if I were holding onto a ledge. I had been standing in my kitchen for so long the tile beneath my feet felt like ice. The air was heavy with the smell of the tea I'd brewed hours earlier and never touched. "I didn't ruin anything," I said slowly, every word measured. "They ruined it the moment they treated me like a stranger." On the other end of the line, Linda went quiet. There was a faint rustling, maybe her shifting the phone, maybe her trying to decide what to say next. Then she spoke again, her voice lighter but edged with judgment. "Nancy, you've always been stubborn. Maybe Emma felt threatened by that." I stared at the reflection of my own face in the dark window over the sink, pale, lined, eyes red from sleepless nights. "Threatened," I repeated, almost to myself. "I paid for her whole fairy tale wedding." Linda gave a small sigh, audible even through the phone. "I'm just saying, don't let pride cause family trouble. Be the bigger person." I didn't bother to respond. My thumb hovered over the end call button, and then I pressed it. The kitchen was silent again, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. The sound made me shiver. It was as though the air in the room had dropped 10 degrees. I picked it up, already bracing myself. That voice. "Mark," I answered coldly. Even saying his name felt like tasting something bitter. My ex-husband, Ryan's father, the man who had walked away years ago and left me to raise our son alone. "Ryan called me," he said without preamble. His voice was rougher than I remembered, clipped, businesslike. "He's a wreck. I don't know what happened at rehearsal, but canceling everything like this is too much." "Too much?" My voice cracked even as I tried to keep it steady. I could hear my pulse in my ears. "Mark, where were you when Emma kicked me out in front of 50 people? Where were you when our son stood there like a coward?" There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Don't bring up old wounds," he snapped, his patience evaporating like steam. "This isn't the time. Let them have their day. Be the bigger person." I felt something inside me sag, not sadness exactly, but exhaustion. I was tired of hearing the same phrase from different mouths. Be the bigger person. I thought of all the times I had swallowed my pride, written another check, stayed quiet for the sake of harmony. That's code for keep paying and shut up, I said bitterly. "Nancy, don't be dramatic." I hung up before he could finish. The click of the call ending was louder than I expected, final like a door slamming. I set the phone down on the counter and looked at my reflection again in the window pane. Pale, worn. My shoulders slumped, a mug of cold tea still sitting on the table like a prop from someone else's life. So that was it. To them I was not family, I was a walking wallet. The realization didn't crush me the way I had always feared it would. It didn't send me into sobs or drive me to the floor. Instead, it settled into my bones like a slow frost, cold and heavy, making me sharper. They thought I was weak because I loved them, but they were about to learn that love has limits. I don't remember when the tears started or when they stopped. I only remember sitting there alone under the dim kitchen light, clutching the mug of tea like it could anchor me, staring at the floor as the hours slid by like sand through my fingers. The pain came in waves, not just because of Ryan and Emma, but because of all the years I'd spent bending, breaking, and giving until I was empty, only to be treated like I was disposable. The phone buzzed again. This time my cousin's name appeared on the screen. "Nancy, don't ruin the family over a misunderstanding," her message read. I silenced it without answering. My thumb pressed the side button until the screen went black. Between the sobs and the silence, an image rose up in my mind. My own wedding day. I was 23, standing in a lace dress that had cost more than our first car. I remembered the smell of powdery perfume, the nervous flutter in my stomach, the way sunlight streamed through the church windows like liquid gold. That morning, my mother-in-law had pulled me aside, her hands soft but her eyes sharp. "Quiet daughters-in-law make the best wives," she had whispered. "Don't make waves." Back then, I had nodded, smiled, and swallowed every rising wave. I thought quiet meant strong. I thought. Silence was a kind of grace. But now, decades later, sitting alone in my kitchen, I finally saw clearly. Quiet does not mean weak. I was not the woman who bent over backward to keep everyone happy anymore. That woman was gone, dissolved somewhere between the last check I wrote and the last humiliation I endured. A strange calm settled over me, heavier than exhaustion, sharper than pain. I stood up slowly, poured the cold tea down the sink, and wiped my cheeks with the back of my hand. No more crying. No more begging for crumbs of love or respect. If Ryan and Emma thought they could humiliate me and still walk down the aisle in the fairy tale I had paid for, they were sorely mistaken. The next morning, I kept my appointment with my lawyer, Maria Sanders. She'd represented me for years, sharp, discreet, steady, the kind of woman who never raised her voice but still filled a room. Sitting across from her bright desk, my stomach clenched again, as if my body had memorized the posture of bracing for impact. The office smelled faintly of polished wood and lemon oil. "Maria," she said gently, folding her hands together on the desk, "you look exhausted. Tell me what happened." And so I did. I told her everything. The rehearsal dinner, the public humiliation, Ryan's silence, the wedding I had paid for down to the last napkin, and how I'd canceled every vendor. Maria listened without interrupting, her face unreadable except for the occasional flicker of something sympathy, maybe, or approval. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, her expression firm. "Let me be very clear," she said in a steady voice. "You did nothing wrong. Every contract is in your name. Every payment came from your account. If they want this wedding, they'll have to pay for it themselves." I exhaled, a small lift of relief cutting through the anger like a sliver of light through a storm cloud. "What if they sue me?" I asked, my voice smaller than I intended, betraying a flicker of the old me, the me who always worried about how to make things right for everyone else. Maria gave a half smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes but radiated confidence. On what grounds? They have no legal basis. If they or their lawyer are foolish enough to send a letter, forward it to me. I'll handle it. A sharp knock on the door made me jump. Maria's assistant poked her head in, eyes apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, there's a man on the line. Says it's urgent. Name's Ryan Miller. I went numb. For a moment the room blurred, the edges of my vision going soft. Maria raised an eyebrow. Do you want to take it? No, I answered immediately. Not now. Good, Maria said. Let him sweat. You've carried him long enough. For the first time in weeks, I felt something unfamiliar in my chest. Not anger, not pain, power. Real, quiet, steady power. I nodded. You're right. Maria slid a stack of papers toward me. I'll send formal notices to all the vendors, confirming cancellation and asserting your sole authority. If Ryan or Emma come here, they'll speak with me, not you. My hand didn't tremble when I signed. The pen glided across the paper, my signature curling like a final stroke of resolve. Let them scream. I was no longer their wallet. Driving back from Maria's office, my phone started buzzing nonstop. At first I ignored it, but the notifications flooded in Facebook, Instagram, messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. The screen lit up like a slot machine. I opened Facebook, stunned. The first thing I saw was Emma's face, eyes red and blotchy, hair pulled into a deliberately neat bun, a tissue clutched delicately in her hand like a prop. Above the video, bold letters read, I never thought my future mother-in-law would ruin our wedding out of jealousy and spite. My heart is broken. She canceled everything. Emma's voice quavered as she spoke to the camera, the hall, the flowers, the food. She even pressured vendors. After everything we did for her, she's destroying the happiest day of our lives. We didn't want to make this public, but she left us no choice. Please pray for us. Comments poured in faster than I could scroll. Oh my God, what kind of mother does that? Cut her off, she's toxic. Poor Emma, stay strong. A fresh wave of anger rose in me as I scrolled. Every word was a lie. After everything we did for her, I was the one who had paid for her designer dress, the overpriced hall, the lavish reception, and now she painted me as the villain. Another notification, this one from Instagram. Emma had posted a photo of her and Ryan holding each other, captioned, "We won't let hate win. Family is the people who lift you up, not the ones who drag you down." Hundreds of likes, dozens of consoling comments. My hands trembled not from sadness, but from fury. I opened my notes app and started a list. Every post, every comment, every lie. I screenshot them one by one, saving each image carefully into a folder for Maria. If Emma wanted a war, she would have one, just not the kind she expected. This time I wouldn't cry. This time I wouldn't beg. This time I would fight. It started with an email from the florist. We regret to inform you that, due to a canceled contract, we cannot provide services for the Miller wedding. Best wishes. Then the photographer posted a story about an unexpected weekend opening and tagged their business account. Next came the band a polite voicemail. Hi Nancy. Just to confirm, we've marked the Miller event as canceled. Thanks for letting us know. The dominoes fell, one after another. By Friday morning, the wedding was in ruins. Then the call came. Emma. Her voice was different now, strained, shaky, trying to be sweet, like sugar over metal. Nancy, can we talk? I'm listening, I answered coldly. I know that rehearsal was tense. People are stressed. I shouldn't have said those things. You sent me away, I interrupted, right in front of everyone. I was overwhelmed, okay, but don't let one mistake ruin everything. Ryan and I can't afford to lose all the deposits. Guests expect a wedding. Please, be reasonable. Do it for Ryan. Don't ruin his big day. I gripped the phone so tightly my fingers ached. I am not ruining anything. I'm saving myself. Silence. Then her tone changed, the real her coming through. You're a bitter old woman, always jealous of me. Ryan deserves a better mother than you. Then he can marry someone better, I said, and hung up before she could answer. The phone rang again, Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. Sitting at my desk, I scrolled through email. One subject made me freeze. Confirmation Maldives honeymoon package payment. At first I thought it was spam, then I saw the sender's email was on my account. My heart sank. I opened it. Thank you for booking a 14-night stay in an overwater villa in the Maldives with a private butler. Charges have been applied to the American Express ending in 3921. My card. At the bottom, your guests, Ryan Miller and Emma Johnson, will enjoy unlimited champagne and a private yacht excursion as part of their package. Congratulations. The booking was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, while I was sitting at lunch with Emma discussing floral arrangements, they had used my card to book a honeymoon near $30,000, without asking, without a word. My hands shook as I scrolled. Another email. Thank you for your recent purchase of a Louis Vuitton bridal luggage set. Something inside me broke. They hadn't just taken my generosity for granted, they'd planned this from the start. The wedding wasn't a celebration of love. It was a heist, a slow, calculated extraction of my money, my trust, my dignity, and they didn't even bother to hide it. I opened my banking app and scrolled through recent transactions. $12,400 at Emma's boutique, $8,950 for a private chef, $3,200 for exclusive spa packages in the Maldives. Not a single charge was mine. I stared at the numbers, my jaw tightening, a vein pulsing in my temple. They had never intended to pay me back, not for the wedding, not for anything, and yet they had the audacity to call me selfish. I closed the laptop with a snap and leaned back in my chair. There would be no more calls, no more second chances, no more of me playing the role of the endlessly forgiving mother. They had shown me who they were. For years I had tried to look past the warning signs, tried to believe the best, but that night the illusion had snapped. Now it was time to show them who I was. I sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, staring at the glowing numbers on the screen, my jaw tight, my pulse a steady hammer in my temples. The glow from the laptop cast pale shadows across my hands. On the banking app, the figures stared back like proof written in neon. $12,400 at Emma's boutique, $8,950 for a private chef, $3,200 for exclusive spa packages in the Maldives. Not a single charge had been mine, not one. They had never intended to repay me, not for the wedding, not for the honeymoon, not for anything at all, and yet they had the audacity to call me selfish. My fingers hovered above the trackpad for a moment before I snapped the laptop shut. The sound echoed through the quiet house like a gavel. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. There would be no more late-night calls, no more whispered pleas, no more second chances, no more maternal indulgence. That part of me had been wrung dry. They had shown me who they were. Now it was my turn to show them who I was. A voicemail arrived late that night while I was folding laundry in the dim light of the living room lamp. The screen of my phone lit up on the counter, pulsing like a beacon in the dark. For just a second, a stupid, stubborn little part of me hoped he might be calling to apologize, to say he had made a mistake, that he had remembered who I was to him. My thumb hesitated, then pressed play. "Mom." His voice was cold, flat, stripped of every softness I'd once known. "I don't even know why I'm bothering. You were never a real mother to me. Always too busy, too controlling, too cold." My chest tightened at the words, but I didn't move. I stood there holding a half-folded towel, the fabric slipping from my fingers as though the weight of his voice had turned it to lead. "Emma was right about you. You've been jealous of her from the beginning. That's why you're doing this. You can't stand to see me happy." There was a sharp breath on the recording, the kind someone takes before spitting out the final blow. "No wonder Dad left you. I get it now. That's who you are. Alone, bitter, always the victim. And now you've ruined the one good thing in my life." The line clicked dead. The room seemed to shrink. I sat staring at my phone, the air around me thick and still, as if even the walls were holding their breath. No tears fell. Not this time. Instead, I felt hollow, empty, like a cord inside me had finally, quietly snapped. Slowly, deliberately, I pressed my thumb on the screen and hit delete. The message vanished, and with it something else disappeared. The last fragile thread tying me to the boy I had loved more than my own life. The realization rose in me like a tide, but it did not drown me. Being alone was better than being used. I set the phone down, turned out the light, and for the first time in weeks, the darkness felt like a kind of relief. It was over. The next morning I sat in Maria's office, my hands wrapped around a cup of tea gone cold. The walls were lined with framed degrees and photos of her family, but my eyes kept drifting to the neat stacks of files on her desk. Maria had already read Emma's public posts, the crocodile tears broadcast to hundreds of strangers, and she had listened to Ryan's venomous voicemail. Her face was calm, composed as ever, but there was an edge in her eyes I had never seen before, a glint like steel catching sunlight. "This is no longer arrogance," she said quietly but firmly. "This is harassment. We'll put a stop to it." She slid a draft across the desk, a cease and desist. The bold letters at the top listed exactly what they had done: harassment, defamation, unauthorized use of funds. My name was there too, but this time as the one taking action, not the one being bled dry. I read each line, my heart beating not from fear but from something harder and cleaner, a resolve that felt as solid as stone. Maria's voice cut through the room like a scalpel as she explained the next steps. "We'll send this straight to Emma. One copy by certified mail, one by email, and one to her parents. They need to understand that if they continue, there will be consequences." I nodded, my fingers tightening around the mug until the ceramic pressed crescents into my palms. "And Ryan?" I asked, my voice quiet but steady. Maria tapped a folder labeled Joint Accounts. "Did you know he's been withdrawing from the account you opened for him in college?" My stomach dropped as if the floor had given way. "I thought he'd stopped using it years ago." "He didn't," she said. "Last month, right after you paid the hall deposit, he withdrew $7,500. My blood went cold, a creeping chill that started at my neck and worked its way down to my fingertips. I looked at the folder, at Maria's steady hands resting on it. "We'll freeze it today," she continued, "before he empties the rest." For a second, my hand hovered over the folder. That account had been my way of saying, "I'll always be there for you." Every deposit over the years had been a promise folded between numbers. That promise no longer meant the same thing. "Do it," I said quietly. Maria nodded once, a small, decisive motion. Consider it done. She picked up the phone and began instructing her legal team. Her voice was firm, professional, unflappable, exactly the kind of calm I needed to hear. As she dictated the cease and desist letter, something strange spread through me. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady. Ryan and Emma had taken enough from me, my money, my dignity, my role as a mother. They would take no more. Maria hung up and looked at me with a small smile, the kind you give someone who has finally stood up straight after years of bending. You did everything right, Nancy. If they want a wedding, they'll have to pay for it themselves. I let out a slow breath, feeling the air move through me like a cleansing wind. Let them try, I said softly. The words didn't sound like a threat. They sounded like a release. By the end of the week, the cracks in their fairy tale had become gaping holes. It started with one Instagram post from Emma, a heavily filtered photo of her hand clasping Ryan's, the diamond on her finger catching the light. The caption read, "Trying to stay strong during this difficult time. Please respect our privacy." The comments below were a jumble of sympathy and confusion. What happened? I thought the wedding was this weekend. Sending love. Stay strong, girl. 2 hours later, Linda texted me. Nancy, did you actually cancel the wedding? Everyone's talking. Her message blinked on my screen like an accusation, but I didn't answer. It was no longer my job to explain. The phone rang. Again, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I swiped to answer. Nancy, this is Mr. Johnson, Emma's father. His voice was tight, each word forced between clenched teeth as though he were chewing gravel. I don't know what Emma said to you at the rehearsal, but you surely don't intend to ruin the whole wedding over a misunderstanding. I stayed silent, waiting for the real point of his call. He exhaled sharply, the sound of a man swallowing his pride. Listen, if this is about money, I won't lie. We're in a difficult spot, but I'm sure we can work something out if you reactivate the payments. There it was, the confession. I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. The same man who'd been too proud to speak to me for months was now begging. I said only, "Handle it yourself." "Do you know what this will do to Emma?" he barked, his voice rising. "The guests, the reputation of both families." I hung up mid-sentence, my thumb pressing the screen with quiet finality. The next day I received an email from the hall manager. Per your cancellation request, the Miller-Johnson wedding has been removed from our calendar. Please note that the date has been rebooked. Rebooked. Their dream wedding wasn't just canceled, it belonged to someone else now. I imagined Emma scrolling Pinterest, yelling at Ryan, her parents helpless on the couch. But when the image came, it carried no triumph. I felt no satisfaction. I felt nothing at all, just a clean space where the pain had been. An email arrived late Sunday night. I almost didn't open it. The subject made my stomach flip. "Can we put this behind us?" My finger hovered for a long time before I clicked. "Mom, we've decided to forgive you for what happened. We know emotions were high and people said things they didn't mean. Emma and I talked and we're willing to let you come to the wedding if you behave and don't make things awkward. This is our day, and we'd appreciate it if you didn't make it about you. Let's move forward as a family. Ryan." I stared at the screen, my jaw slack. "Forgive me?" A laugh burst out of me before I could stop it. It started small and sharp, like a crack in ice, then grew until I was doubled over, clutching my sides, trembling with bitter laughter. "Forgive me." After I financed their fairy tale, after Emma had kicked me out of rehearsal like hired help, after Ryan stood by while I was humiliated, they thought I needed forgiveness. I wiped a tear from the corner of my eye, not from sadness, but from laughing too hard. I hit reply, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, but I didn't type a single word. They didn't deserve a response. Instead, I closed my laptop and pushed it aside. They could keep their small game of control. I had stopped being the fool. The wedding day arrived. A bright Saturday morning in June, just the way Emma wanted. The sky outside my hotel window was a deep, endless blue, and the scent of eucalyptus drifted in through the open balcony door. My room had been upgraded to a suite with a private balcony overlooking the ocean. By midday, I was stretched out on a lounge chair, my hair wrapped in a towel, a chilled glass of champagne in my hand, the cool stem pressing against my fingers like a secret talisman. A notification popped up on my phone. "Today's the day. Looking forward to seeing you both at 2 p.m. A guest who didn't know the fairy tale had collapsed. I took a sip of champagne and smiled slightly. At 2 p.m., I pictured the hall now booked for another couple, full of flowers and laughter that had nothing to do with Ryan or Emma. The thought didn't bring pleasure. It brought peace, a quietness so deep it almost hummed. For the first time in years, I felt light, as though a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The staff brought a tray of fruit and refilled my glass. I took out my phone, opened Instagram, and snapped a photo of the view. Endless blue sky, sunlight sparkling on the water, my champagne glass glinting in the corner. I typed a short caption, "Best decision I ever made." No more context, no names, but I knew they'd see it and understand. By Monday morning, the whispers had grown into a roar. It started with a single comment under Emma's tearful Instagram post. "Isn't Nancy the one who paid for the whole wedding? That doesn't add up." At first, Emma's friends rushed to defend her. "Don't spread lies. You don't know the whole story. She's a toxic mother ruining their happiness." Then another comment appeared. "My cousin works at the venue. Nancy reserved and paid for everything. Emma and Ryan didn't pay a cent. The dam broke." Screenshots of Emma charging the Maldives honeymoon to my card somehow leaked into a wedding gossip group. People didn't let up. So they used her money to fund the wedding and a fancy vacation, then humiliated her. Elegant. Imagine biting the hand that feeds you. They deserve each other spoiled and arrogant. Even some of Ryan's old college buddies joined in. No surprise. He's always let women walk all over him. I didn't comment. I didn't like or share, but I saved every screenshot, one by one, tucking them away like evidence in a trial. That afternoon, Linda, my daughter-in-law, called. "Nancy," she began cautiously, "I didn't know. I'm so sorry. We thought Emma was telling the truth, that you were trying to sabotage for no reason." "You believed her?" I asked calmly. "I know," she sighed, "but people are starting to see the truth now. I just wanted you to know you're not alone." I didn't answer. I didn't need anyone's pity. What I needed, and finally had, was clarity. For years I had let people take and take, thinking it was my job to keep the peace. But peace bought at the cost of sacrifice isn't peace, it's silence. And I had finished being silent. By the second week, it spread like wildfire. Emma's Instagram went quiet. Ryan's profile picture vanished. It started small, a mutual friend posting, "Maybe don't bite the hand that feeds you next time." Then a cousin of Emma's shared an indirect tweet, "If you can't pay for your own wedding, don't yell at the person who's paying for it." People moved from whispers to laughter. Screenshots of Emma's posts leaked to a bridal forum. Strangers who were brides-to-be piled in. She ruined her own wedding by being so rude. Think she thought her mother-in-law was her sugar mama? delusions of grandeur. Who kicks out the person paying the bills? Even vendors joined in. An anonymous florist wrote, "We warned her the contract was in her mother-in-law's name. She didn't care, thought she was above consequences." I said nothing. I didn't need to defend myself. Truth has its own way of getting out. By the end of the month, Emma and Ryan's guest list had evaporated. Friends stopped answering calls. Their dream wedding had become the talk of the town, not as a celebration, but as a cautionary tale. And I sat quietly on a balcony 2 states away, watching the sun slip below the horizon, a glass of champagne in my hand. I posted a peaceful photo feed up on the chaise, the ocean stretching forever. Caption: "Happiness suits me better." I didn't check likes or comments. I didn't care whether Ryan, Emma, or anyone who'd called me too sensitive saw it. The post wasn't for them. It was for me. The next morning the phone rang. Ryan. I stared at the screen a long time and declined. A text followed. "Mom, can we talk? We messed up." I turned the phone off and put my face down on the table. For years I let people drag me into their storms. Now I chose peace. And peace meant never going back to their chaos. They thought they could humiliate me and still live off my bond. Generosity. They were wrong. I was not their wallet. I was the lesson they needed to learn. In the end, I realized there are relationships called family that carry no love at all. And sometimes love given the wrong way, without boundaries, becomes the very trap that hurts you most. I used to tell myself I was keeping everything calm, sacrificing for the people I loved. The truth was I was losing myself to hold together a connection that wasn't real anymore. Only when I stood up and stopped being silent did I understand. Love can't come from one side only, and no one has the right to treat you badly just because they call you Mom. I don't tell this story to complain. I tell it because I believe we've all stood at the edge between kindness and clarity. Maybe you're in a situation like this now, or you know someone being hurt by their own family. If it were you, what would you do? Would you stay silent and keep taking it? Or would you protect yourself like I did? I really want to read your thoughts in the comments. And if stories like this matter to you, stay with me. Every journey has lessons worth hearing, and this community is a place for us to reflect together and heal together.